There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the fire that once burned with ambition, hunger, and desire flickers, remains. You've climbed the mountain of self-realization. You've torn apart the illusions. You've peeled back the masks that once defined you, and yet now nothing. No urgency. No motivation. This is not depression. This is not laziness. This is the collapse of the false self. Remains. Carl Jung called it a return to the self, a death of who you thought you were, and a terrifying confrontation with the vast, unstructured truth of who you actually are. After spiritual awakening, your ego can no longer pretend to be king, and without that mask, it's left to chase. You see, for most of your life, your motivation came from ego. You were running to prove, to be seen, to be enough, to outpace the voice that said you weren't, to silence the shadow that whispered, presence remains. You're not worthy. But once the veil is lifted, once you awaken, there's nothing to run from. And when there's nothing to run from, the machinery of ambition breaks down. The fuel source vanishes. You're left with stillness, silence, and this deep, aching void that asks, now. Now. It feels like death, because it is. The death of your old operating system. The death of who you were told to be. The death of doing for the sake of doing. And in this space between your past identity and your emerging self, motivation becomes a ghost. This is not the end. This is the beginning, and it will require a new kind of fire. One not forged in fear or ego, but in clarity, in meaning, in depth. Presence remains. Not the roar of the crowd, but the whisper of your soul. Jung taught that the self is both the center and the whole of the psyche. It is not ambition. It is integration. It does not chase validation. It seeks alignment. So when you awaken and feel no motivation, what you're really feeling is the collapse of a system that never truly belonged to you. This is your invitation to create a new one. But first, press remains. You must sit in the discomfort. You must endure the space between identities without rushing to fill it. Like a snake shedding its skin, you cannot force the process. You must let the old fall away so the new can be born. Not in panic, not in desperation, but in surrender. This is where most people quit, because surrender is not sexy. It is not a hashtag or a productivity hack. It is a descent into the unknown, a slow, painful dissolution of the parts of you that were rewarded by the world, but never fed your soul. You must be willing to be nothing before you can become something real. The great industrialists, Ford, Carnegie, Edison, were not born from comfort. Hess remains. They were forged in the crucible of confusion and challenge. Edison failed over 1,000 times before the light bulb worked, because he was trying to impress the world, but because he was aligned with something deeper than approval, vision. True motivation comes not from the mind, but from the soul. And the soul speaks in silence. Presence remains. When the noise of the world falls away, when the goals no longer excite you, when achievement feels empty, you're being called to listen to what you should do, but to why you were born. And that answer will never come from the outside. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. And holiness is not achieved through hustle. It is remembered through integration. The truth is, you've been trained to value only the parts of you that produce results. That climb, that grind, that push. But after awakening, those parts feel hollow because they were never the whole story. They were fragments, pieces of armor, tools for survival. You are being asked to embrace the forgotten parts, the inner dreamer, the shadow, the mystic, the artist. The parts that don't perform simply are. And from that integration, a new kind of motivation is born, one rooted not in fear, but in love. Not in chasing success, in creating meaning. But that fire will not roar like the old one. It will not be loud. It will be quiet, steady, unwavering. Presence remains. It will feel more like peace than adrenaline, more like devotion than urgency. And at first, this will feel wrong. Because the world has told you motivation must hurt, that you must grind, sacrifice, bleed for your worth. Mains. But what if the greatest power is born from stillness? What if the deepest drive is the one that does not shout, but whispers? This is the paradox of spiritual awakening. You must lose everything that drove you to find the only thing that ever truly could. Present remains. So if you are here, if you have awakened, and you feel empty, good. You're exactly where you're meant to be. Now begins the real working, the reconstruction of a life that honors your soul. And it begins not with goals, but with clarity. Clarity is not found in a to-do list, it is found in asking better questions. Who am I now? What do I value? What lights me up? Not in theory, but in truth. Strip away the titles, the accolades, the opinions. What remains? If motivation is gone, then ask, what part of me was it feeding? Was it the part of you that needed approval, chased applause? That believed love must be earned? That needed to be busy to feel worthy? If so, remains, then its absence is not your downfall, it's your deliverance. Jung once wrote, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. You must accept the death of the old drive to be liberated into a higher one. One rooted in alignment, adrenaline. When you're motivated by alignment, you no longer need permission to act. You no longer chase a reward to justify the effort. You move because not moving would be a betrayal of your truth. That is power. Quiet, steady, soul-born power. And it begins when you stop trying to feel motivated and start trying to feel true. When Edison sat in the dark night after failure number 1863, presence remains. He wasn't thinking about motivation. He was thinking about vision, about contribution, about lighting the world. That's the fire that never dies. Presence remains. And now it's your turn to build that fire. To stop waiting to feel ready and start trusting the whisper. To stop chasing the old high and start honoring the deeper yes. You have not lost motivation. You've lost illusion. And in its place, something real is waiting to emerge. But you must be brave enough to build a new engine. Not powered by ego, but by essence. Not fueled by fear, by fullness. This is not the end of your drive. It is the birth of your destiny. So where do you go from here? You begin by remembering what the world made you, forgetting that you are not a machine. You were not made to produce, Keynes. You were not made to climb invisible ladders to nowhere. You are not here to outperform, out-hustle, or outshine anyone. You are here to become whole, and wholeness is messy. It does not always look productive. Sometimes it looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like tears. Sometimes it looks like a blank page, an empty canvas, a quiet walk through the woods. Not because you are lost, but because you are remembering. Jung warned us the greatest danger is not in failure, but in unconscious success. Success that is achieved by abandoning the self. Success that requires you to become someone else. That kind of success may fill your bank account, but it will bankrupt your soul. Presence remains. So if you're sitting here now, surrounded by silence, unsure of what to do next, good. That means you're awake. Presence remains. That means you're no longer hypnotized by the world's noise. That means your compass is being recalibrated. Not to what's popular, to what's personal. Deeply, unshakably personal. And now you must choose. Will you go back to sleep? Rebuild the ego? Chase the shiny goals? Or will you stand in this sacred pause and wait for something real to speak? That voice won't shout. It never does. It will rise it from within. Quiet, certain, undeniable. It will tell you the truth. The kind of truth you don't read in books or hear in seminars. Presence remains. The kind of truth that rises from your bones and reminds you. This is why you were born. It will not motivate you in the way you once knew. It will not pump you full of dopamine and deadlines. It will ground you, anchor you, and in that stillness remains. You will begin to feel something you thought you had lost: purpose. Not the purpose the world sold you, the one that comes wrapped in a job title or a trophy, but the one that lives in your chest. The one that asks, not, what can I get, but what can I give? That kind of purpose pulls you, not with force, but with grace. Doesn't demand you climb 1,000 mountains. It invites you to build one that's yours, stone by stone, breath by breath, with patience, with care, presence. And in that slow building, motivation returns, not as a roar, but as a rhythm. Because after awakening, life stops being a race. It becomes a ritual, a sacred expression of your trust self, and every action becomes an offering. Every choice becomes a brushstroke. Every word, every deed, every breath becomes art. And now, you understand why the old motivation had to die. Because it was never about you. It was about escaping shame from silence, pleasing the crowd. But now you walk with the courage to be quiet, to be misunderstood, to go inward. Remains, even when the world pulls you out. This is the path Jung called individuation, the path of becoming who you were always meant to be. Beneath the noise remains, beneath the armor, beneath the roles you inherited. It is the most courageous act a human being can undertake. Pres remains, and it begins in this place, this void, where you thought your fire had died. But the fire hasn't died. It's changed color. It no longer burns with the white, hot frenzy of insecurity. It burns with the deep orange glow of certainty. Not the certainty of answers, but of direction, of alignment, of peace. And with it comes a new kind of discipline. Not the discipline of punishment or control, but the discipline of devotion, of showing up for your calling, of honoring your sacred yes, even when the world does not understand. Lincoln had it. In his darkest hours, he did not push harder. He went deeper, into solitude, into self. And from that pain, he emerged, not with false confidence, with rooted clarity, the kind of clarity that built nations. You see, true motivation is not found in momentum. It is found in meaning. And meaning can only be revealed through stillness, not speed. So stop waiting to feel like it. That was the language of your past self. Your true self does not ask to feel like it. It simply knows this is what I must do. Not for applause, not for outcome, because it would be a betrayal to do anything else. And slowly that fire returns. Quiet at first, then steady, then wild again. But not out of control. Presence remains, wild like nature, wild like truth, wild like freedom. But you must trust the process. Trust that you do not need the old systems. Trust that your soul will build new ones. Ones designed for who you are now, not who you were trained to be. And this is where vision is born, in the noise, not in the poise, in the in-between, in the empty space where the old world ends and the new world begins. Vision does not shout, vision waits. Waits for you to stop chasing, to stop running, to stop pretending. And when you are finally still enough to receive it, arrives. Not as a blueprint, but as a seed, a whisper, a nudge, a flicker. And your job is not to demand it grow overnight. Job is to protect that flicker, to feed it with presence, with intention, with integrity. Because if you protect that vision, it will guide you. It will give you not just direction, but fuel. The kind of fuel that doesn't burn out, that doesn't need caffeine or competition or crisis. And suddenly remains. Motivation is no longer something you chase. It's something you become. Because you're not here to be a machine. You're here to be a flame. And flame, once aligned with purpose, does not ask permission to burn.